and welcome to this virtual public involvement meeting for the Beltline Planning and Environment Linkages Study, or PEL for short. My name is Jeff Behrens, and I'm the DOT project manager on this study. Joining me tonight is Jeff Held from Strand Associates. He is the consultant project manager. So for tonight's meeting, we'll start by showing a video presentation that will provide a general summary of the Beltline PEL study and the efforts that have been completed to date. It'll focus on the preferred strategy package that's documented in the draft Beltline study summary report. The preferred strategy package is a combination of the potential improvements throughout the corridor that we are recommending for further evaluation in future National Environmental Policy Act or NEPA studies. Following the presentation, there will be a question and answer period. The meeting will conclude once we stop receiving questions or by 7 p.m., whichever comes first. Please note that all participants will remain muted throughout the meeting and the chat function has been disabled. If you have questions, please submit them by emailing Madison Beltline at dot.wi.gov as shown on the screen. The email will continue to be shown during the presentation and after. And for those of you that are calling in on the audio only line, that email to submit questions again is madisonbeltline at dot.wi.gov. There's no space between Madison and Beltline. We'll plan to answer general questions about the study during this meeting, and we will try to get to all of them, all of the questions that we receive. However, if you have a more specific question like how will this affect my specific property, or if we run past 7 p.m., we will follow up individually with you after the meeting. Thanks again for attending tonight, and we'll start now with a video presentation.
Hello, and thank you for your interest in the Beltline Planning and Environment Linkages Study, or PEL. The Wisconsin DOT is investigating potential long-term solutions to address existing and anticipated transportation issues on the Beltline corridor. The work completed during the study is documented in the draft Beltline PEL summary report, which can be found on the study website. The following recorded presentation provides an overview of the study process, its conclusions, and the next steps. Please consider providing feedback using the online comment form on the public involvement page of the study website or the other methods outlined at the end of this presentation. The study limits begin at US 14 or University Avenue in the city of Middleton and extend about 20 miles south and east to the County N interchange in the town of Cottage Grove. The Beltline PEL study corridor carries up to 145,000 vehicles per day and includes 18 interchanges. The PEL study process sets up collaboration between federal, state, and environmental agencies, as well as project stakeholders. This early coordination helps eliminate unreasonable alternatives, accelerates environmental review, and may identify any concerns. The PEL study results can flow directly into future National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, studies. A NEPA study analyzes the environmental impacts of projects that use federal funding. During the NEPA process, the potential long-term improvements identified in the PEL will be evaluated in more detail. Design and construction of a project cannot occur until the NEPA process is complete. A PEL study initiated prior to NEPA analysis can help to streamline overall project delivery. The goal of the Beltline PEL study was developed early in the process through collaboration with agencies, municipalities, and other stakeholders. The Beltline PEL seeks to improve safety and multimodal travel along and across the Beltline corridor in a way that supports economic development, acknowledges community plans, contributes positively to the area's quality of life, and limits adverse environmental and social effects. With input from the agencies, local municipalities, and stakeholders, 12 Beltline PEL objectives were also developed. These objectives focus on improving safety, mobility, and accessibility for all modes of travel on, across, or near the Beltline. The first steps of the study involved outreach and engagement. Using the feedback received, numerous improvement concepts or components were developed throughout the corridor for multiple transportation modes, including vehicles, pedestrians, bicycles, and transit. The components were then prioritized and combined into a range of potential long-term solutions called strategy packages. With input from various agencies and stakeholders, a draft preferred strategy package was identified. In addition, options for how the corridor could be separated into different sections for future NEPA studies were developed, along with general timeframes for when those studies should begin. The Wisconsin DOT identified a preferred strategy package containing the improvement components the agency proposes to carry forward for more detailed analysis in future NEPA studies. The work completed during the Beltline PEL study is documented in the draft Beltline PEL summary report. The next few slides provide more detail on the strategy package development process. The section of the Beltline east of the interstate was not included in the development of the strategy packages. Several corridor needs for this section were addressed as part of the US 1218 and County AB interchange project, and a US 12 freeway conversion study identified potential spot improvements that could be made farther east if needed. The first step was to develop the improvement components throughout the corridor. They fall into 5 main categories: mainline and interchange components, for example, adding travel lanes on the Beltline, improving interchange ramp intersections, and modifying weaving areas for entering and exiting ramp traffic. Roadway crossing and connections components, for example, constructing a new bridge over the Beltline. Pedestrian and bicycle components, for instance, building a new path to connect areas along or across the Beltline. Transit components, which aim to improve transit reliability along and across the Beltline, and park and ride components, adding new park and ride lots near the Beltline. The components were then prioritized to determine which combination would fit into the multiple strategy packages, representing a range of long-term options for the Beltline corridor. The mainline and interchange components were prioritized differently than the other component categories. The number of travel lanes added to the Beltline mainline varied with the specific strategy package. A higher mobility strategy package added travel lanes to the Beltline, while lower mobility packages did not. For the weaving and interchange improvements, the locations with the worst traffic operations were typically included in more of the strategy packages, and the locations that were not as bad were included in fewer. The remaining components of roadway crossing and connections, bicycle and pedestrian connections, park and ride, and transit categories were prioritized based on meeting the Beltline PEL study objectives, feedback received during outreach efforts, potential environmental and real estate impacts, and accessibility improvements to nearby jobs or destinations. WISDOT received feedback on the transit components before the Madison Metro Network redesign took effect in June 2023. Transit components were then reprioritized based on those changes. Several strategy packages were developed that combined individual components to meet the Beltline PEL study objectives throughout the corridor. They included different levels of improvement that range from a strategy package that keeps the Beltline as it is today with only essential improvements and maintenance, labeled SP1 or the Preserve and Maintain package, to a strategy package that allows the Beltline to operate as well as possible while offering the highest level of mobility and accessibility to all modes of travel, labeled SP4. After gathering feedback on the strategy packages and completing additional outreach and analysis, a draft preferred strategy package was identified for the corridor and presented at the last public meetings in 2024. 2 main factors guided the identification of the draft preferred strategy package. The first was the stakeholder feedback received during previous outreach efforts, including several main themes. Respondents want a focus on multimodal components. Adding additional mainline or general purpose lanes to the Beltline was generally not favored throughout the corridor, particularly east of Verona Road where the flex lane is. However, an extension of the flex lane west of Verona Road was generally viewed as acceptable. And in general, people agreed with how the components were prioritized and placed into the strategy packages. The second factor was how well the packages addressed the Beltline PEL goals and objectives. As an example, past feedback has not been in favor of adding a general purpose lane in each direction of the Beltline mainline. However, the study team did not want to dismiss it from further evaluation in NEPA because it's anticipated to do the most to address the Beltline PEL study operational goals. In addition, there was not enough detailed analysis of the potential impacts versus the potential benefits during the Beltline PEL study. Strategy Package 4 was used as the basis for the draft preferred strategy package because it includes all the most viable components. However, modifications were made from there based on the factors listed above. Since the last public involvement meetings, modifications were made to the draft preferred strategy package, and the preferred strategy package has been identified. The preferred strategy package is not what's proposed for future construction. It includes the improvement components that the Wisconsin DOT feels should be carried forward and used to develop the range of alternatives that will be evaluated in more detail during future NEPA studies. Some components may change or be eliminated from future consideration as the alternatives, impacts, and costs are developed in more detail and additional feedback is received. Let's review the preferred strategy package. For the mainline components, the section of the Beltline west of Verona Road, shown by the yellow line, includes 2 possible options, either extending the existing flex lane or adding 1 general purpose lane in each direction. The mainline components are shown extending north of the northern study limit to Parmenter Street. This is because the close interchange spacing, horizontal curves, and the vertical profile of the Beltline in that area make it difficult to drop an additional lane until the Parmenter Street interchange. The section of the Beltline between Verona Road and the interstate also includes two possible options: either keeping the same number of mainline lanes and the existing flex lane, or potentially adding one general purpose lane in each direction while still keeping the existing flex lane, shown by the dashed red lines. For the section of the Beltline between Stoughton Road and the interstate, the existing flex lane would be extended to the interstate, shown by the brown lines. The preferred strategy package includes weaving improvements at several locations shown by yellow circles on the map. Weaving areas are in places where traffic entering the Beltline mixes with traffic exiting at the next off-ramp. These areas often have safety concerns and are where freeway operations frequently break down. Locations include both mainline directions between Old Sauk Road and Mineral Point Road, between Whitney Way and Verona Road, between Fish Hatchery Road and Park Street, between John Nolan Drive and West Broadway, and between Monona Drive and Stoughton Road. There are no changes to the number or location of the weaves included in the Preferred Strategy Package versus the draft Preferred Strategy Package. The Preferred Strategy Package proposes improvements at each interchange. Most locations are anticipated to be conventional improvements, such as adding turn lanes or through lanes at the ramp intersections. These are the darker blue circles on the map. Locations where more substantial changes are being considered are the light blue circles. These locations include Gammon Road, Whitney Way, Verona Road, Stoughton Road, and the Beltline interchange with I-3990. The Stoughton Road interchange is currently being evaluated as part of a separate Wisconsin DOT study. Two modifications have been made to the interchange components identified in the draft Preferred Strategy Package. The locations of these interchanges are highlighted by yellow boxes. The first is the addition of proposed improvements at the I-3990 interchange at the Beltline. After further analysis, it was determined that a third ramp lane should be evaluated going from the eastbound Beltline to northbound I-39, as well as from southbound I-39 to the westbound Beltline. The second is the removal of the conventional interchange improvements at the US 18151 Verona Road interchange. Further analysis determined that the relatively minor improvements included in the conventional option would not address the operational issues at the interchange. Therefore, this improvement component was eliminated, leaving only the interchange reconfiguration system ramps option. Potential new roadway crossings included in the Preferred Strategy Package would accommodate vehicles, bicycles, and pedestrians. Locations are shown by the brown arrows on the map. West of Gammon Road, a crossing either east of Gammon Road or west of Whitney Way, the dashed arrows, west of Park Street, and a crossing of US 14 south of the Beltline. There were no changes to the number or location of roadway crossings and connections components. However, the City of Madison is currently conducting a study of the new crossing location west of Park Street at Perry Street. Pedestrian and bicycle accommodations proposed for more detailed evaluation are shown in green. In addition to the accommodations provided on the roadway crossings just described, additional locations include north of Old Sauk Road, south of Old Sauk Road, an extension of the Westtown Path from Mineral Point to Gammon Road, which is currently partially constructed, a crossing of Whitney Way north of the Beltline, a connection from Whitney Way to the Southwest Commuter Path, a connection from Seminole Highway to the Cannonball Path, either north or south of the Beltline, shown by the dashed green arrows, a connection from West Broadway to the Upper Yahara River Trail through the Capitol Springs Recreation Area, and a connection from Monona Drive to Stoughton Road and south to McFarland. No changes have been made to the number or location of pedestrian and bicycle components. Possible park and ride locations included in the Preferred Strategy Package are shown by purple circles. They include US 14 University Avenue at the Beltline, US 151 Verona Road at County PD, Fish Hatchery Road at County PD, and US 14 at McCoy Road. No changes have been made to the number or location of park and rides. Finally, transit priority improvements are proposed at each of the interchanges with Metro Transit routes. There are 9 total outlined by a purple hexagon. The highest priority locations are where bus rapid transit service is currently or is planned to travel through the interchange. These are located at Mineral Point and Fish Hatchery Roads. One option for transit priority would allow buses to pass cars lined up at traffic signals at or near the Beltline to improve on-time service. No changes have been made to the locations proposed for transit priority. This map shows all components included in the preferred strategy package. These are the potential improvements the Wisconsin DOT feels warrant further investigation during future NEPA studies. It is not a preferred construction alternative. The preferred strategy package may be adjusted during future NEPA studies as the alternatives, impacts, and costs are reviewed in more detail and additional feedback is received. The study team investigated how the corridor could be logically separated into different sections for future NEPA analysis and eventual construction to most efficiently address the Beltline needs when they're anticipated to occur. Factors that influence the timing of the future NEPA studies include the safety, traffic operations, and infrastructure needs in each section. The Beltline needs may change over time, so the proposed sections and timing may need to be adjusted accordingly if new issues or needs arise. No construction related to the Beltline PEL study is scheduled at this time. Based on the analysis completed, the Beltline is proposed to be separated into 3 logical sections for future NEPA studies. The proposed sections include the corridor west of Verona Road from University Avenue to Whitney Way, shown in blue, is proposed to move into a NEPA study in the mid to late 2020s based on infrastructure, safety, and operational needs. In the Verona Road area, shown in green, the Wisconsin DOT is also proposing to begin a NEPA study in the mid to late 2020s. The Verona Road interchange is currently seeing long backups during peak periods due to rapid growth in the metropolitan area. In the near term, the Wisconsin DOT is evaluating potential interim or spot improvements that could be implemented to help address the existing congestion issues and improve safety. More information on the possible near-term improvements can be found in the PEL summary report. For the section of the corridor east of Verona Road, shown in orange, a NEPA analysis for long-term improvements corridor-wide is not expected to be needed for several years, likely sometime in the 2030s. The Beltline Flex Lane has addressed many operational issues, and initial safety results are promising. WSDOT will continue to monitor the Flex Lane performance to see if these trends continue. In addition, the department is investigating potential interim or spot improvements that may be needed in this section before completing a corridor-wide NEPA analysis. More information on the potential spot or interim improvements can be found in the draft Beltline PEL summary report. Let's look at the next steps for the Beltline PEL study. The work completed and the conclusions reached during the study are documented in the draft Beltline PEL summary report. The feedback received from this public involvement meeting will help determine what changes, if any, should be made to the preferred strategy package and the draft Beltline PEL summary report. Any updates will be made in the next few months. The final results of the Beltline PEL study will be documented in the final PEL summary report, which is anticipated to be completed and published on the study website in early 2026. This would complete the Beltline PEL study. Opportunities to provide feedback on the potential long-term improvements for the Beltline corridor will continue during future NEPA studies. We'd like to hear from you. The public involvement page of the study website contains links to the materials from this meeting, an online comment form, as well as the draft Beltline PEL summary report. A QR code and website link are provided on this slide. You can also contact WSDOT Project Manager Jeff Behrens with any questions or comments. Please submit any comments by January 15, 2026. Thank you for viewing this presentation. We appreciate your interest in the Beltline PEL study.
Okay, so at this point, we'll plan to answer any questions that came in during the presentation. You can still submit questions. Just use that madisonbeltline@dot.wi.gov email address that's on the screen. One thing I do want to mention, the draft Beltline PEL study summary report, an online comment form, a handout, and exhibits for this meeting are currently available for review on the study website. You can access that by using the link on the screen, or you can scan that QR code. The recorded presentation will be uploaded on the website after the meeting. And again, we will conclude the meeting once we stop receiving questions or by 7 p.m., whichever occurs first. All right, the first question that we have is, why don't the tightly spaced westbound John Nolan entrance and westbound Rimrock exit have weave improvements?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And based on the traffic analysis, the volume's actually, so the westbound on-ramp from John Nolan Drive is actually pretty low volume. And it didn't look to us as though the higher level of weaving improvements were needed there. But the closely spaced interchanges in general are part of the issues out there operationally. And so that's going to continue to be evaluated in NEPA, in future NEPA studies. There'll be new traffic forecasts that will be completed at the start of the NEPA studies, and the operations analysis will be updated, but didn't jump out as a high priority in terms of weaving improvements based on the analysis in the PEL.
All right, the next question that we have is, are there any mini projects that can be done in the meantime to address some traffic and safety issues since the Beltline study construction date is so far off? The flex lane and the added eastbound lane across Todd Drive are examples of some recent projects that have helped.
Yeah, that's a good question. There are some interim and spot improvements that are identified in the PEL summary report. And so one of the areas that is going to be considered is the Verona Road area, westbound. The department is considering a queue warning system to give a little bit more advanced warning when there's slowdowns in traffic approaching Verona Road. There are a couple of others that are identified. The extension of the flex lane eastbound from where it currently ends just after Stoughton Road to the Beltline interchange with the interstate is another project that could move forward ahead of a larger study. And there are a few others that are also mentioned in the PEL summary report as well.
Yeah, I think another one, just to add on to that, is looking at the weaving areas between Monona Drive and Stoughton Road. Those are areas that we're seeing a lot of backups occurring. So that's something that could be a potential improvement ahead of a corridor-wide NEPA analysis. And in addition to that, also looking at the interchange with the interstate, the potential to possibly add some additional ramp lanes for the eastbound Beltline to the northbound interstate and from the southbound interstate to the westbound Beltline. Mm-hmm. And as Jeff mentioned, those are in the Beltline PEL summary report. All right, the next question, when can we expect plans to research northern and southern bypasses around Madison? The southern one in particular seems like it would help the most due to all the Verona Road US 151 traffic, which includes Epic employees and many cross-town trucks.
Yeah, so we did investigate both what we referred to as a North Mendota Parkway, which would be a connection north of the lakes, and a south reliever, which is similar to the one that was asked about in that question, basically from Verona over to the interstate, as what we called standalone strategies. What we found is that while both of those would carry a pretty substantial amount of traffic, they actually didn't relieve the Beltline as much as you would expect. And part of that has to do with, we did a data collection effort early on in the study and found that a lot of the traffic on the Beltline enters and exits within 3 or 4 interchanges. The majority of it does. And so those longer trips, the longer you make a connection like that, the less useful it is to people. That said, those would both be roadways that would be useful, but they just wouldn't relieve the Beltline to the extent that would be needed to eliminate consideration of additional changes to the Beltline. So they were dismissed as standalone strategies, but they are roadways that would be useful to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think as you had mentioned, they in the analysis they did seem to draw quite a bit of regional traffic. It just didn't have as big effect on the traffic volumes on the Beltline. Mm-hmm. And there are currently no plans to study that, but we have noted that they do tend to draw a fair amount of traffic. So that could be considered in the future, but isn't planned at this particular time. Mm-hmm. All right, the next one we have, what consideration was made to demographic information and the potential disparities for communities near the Beltline? For example, it seems disproportionately lower income and non-white in the areas closest to the region of the Beltline if the highway expansion exacerbates existing disparities like asthma rates. Was that discussed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we did do specific outreach to some of the lower income and minority populations near the Beltline and took feedback into account in that regard. We also completed an indirect and cumulative effects analysis that tried to look at those types of impacts. It's certainly something that would continue to be considered in the future NEPA studies. The guidelines and the policies from the reviewing agencies kind of continue to change regarding that. but it's certainly something that is considered. It's one of the factors when we look at the larger environmental impacts, and would continue to be considered in the future NEPA studies that will follow the PEL study.
All right, next question. Is there information as to public transit versus personal vehicle usage rates for neighborhoods closest to the Beltline? If there are higher rates of public transit use in this area, what are the ways in which this would benefit them?
So the PEL does look at a number of different types of components, as we call them, and we did have a suite of transit improvement components. For this study, that mostly had to do with helping buses get through the interchanges and to improve on-time service. In terms of the usage, the percent of transit riders and drivers in the neighborhoods near the Beltline, there's data that is included in the travel demand model that the Greater Madison Area MPO maintains, and that travel demand model is part of the process for the traffic forecasts that are completed for a study like this. So some of that information is built into the forecasts. That said, the forecasts are another component, another data source that would be updated at the beginning of the future NEPA studies. And the travel demand model is expected to be updated soon. And they're always working on improving that and taking into consideration travel patterns and the modes that people travel and updating that model to make it as accurate as it can be. But the forecast will be revisited in the NEPA stage.
All right, next question. Is there a scenario in the future where there's a shared use path along the Beltline from John Nolan to Middleton?
That's a good question. We did try to look at components bike and pedestrian components that would complete some of the gaps. I don't know that we had looked at a continuous path along the Beltline, but there are some gaps that I think would be really useful to fill, and those are the components that made it into the preferred strategy package. This is another area I think that would be revisited. That would be revisited in the NEPA phase. And of course, Madison and Fitchburg and the communities in the area continue to develop their bike and ped networks. And so those will be reassessed at the beginning of NEPA as well. But there's actually, with the components that are proposed in the preferred strategy package, there's a fairly complete east-west route along the corridor for bike and ped.
Yeah, and those components were arrived at with a lot of communication with representatives from local municipalities and organizations as well. But again, that's something that also could be revisited during future NEPA studies, or would be revisited, I should say.
Yeah.
All right, next we have a noise wall question. Are you planning on adding any additional noise barriers along the Beltline, specifically interested in the Middleton-Madison border on the west side?
Sure. So as part of the PEL study, we did not complete a detailed noise analysis. That will be required during NEPA, and ultimately the recommended alternative would have to be modeled for noise impacts. There's a pretty prescribed process about whether or not noise walls qualify, whether or not improvements qualify for the construction of noise walls, and it has to do with the cost and the number of receptors or kind of people's homes, businesses that are impacted by the noise. So to date, there has not been a detailed noise analysis, but it would be part of future NEPA studies.
Yeah, just to add on to that, with where we're at, we're kind of in a higher level concept type phase, and the PEL is recommending the different components that should be evaluated in more detail in NEPA. And in NEPA, we'll develop a range of different detailed alternatives, and then the noise analysis will then be done on those more detailed alternatives.
Yeah.
All right, next we have, would adding a general purpose lane option be within the existing footprint of the Beltline, similar to the flex lane? Sorry, my computer moved on me here. Similar to the flex lane, or would the added lane include expansion of the Beltline's width?
Yeah. So generally speaking, west of the Verona Road area, there is space in the median, and the bridges are generally wide enough to be able to add, whether it be a general purpose lane or potentially an extension of the flex lane to the inside, and it would not impact the footprint. In the area east of Verona Road, where the existing flex lane is, adding a general purpose lane would have impacts. It would widen the footprint of the highway. So it depends on which portion of the Beltline you're talking about. But the flex lane kind of took advantage of the space that was there east of Verona Road. And so any additional general purpose lane on that eastern portion would expand the footprint of the Beltline.
All right. Next, can you repeat what might be expected at the Verona Road Beltline interchange?
Mm-hmm. So the Verona Road interchange, the EIS that was completed for that and the construction that occurred over the last several years and finished up in about 2018, that was phase 1 and phase 2 of the total improvements. That there is a phase 3, which includes free flow ramps from the westbound Beltline to head south and from northbound Verona Road or US 151 to head east. So that is something that would be part of the range of alternatives for a future NEPA study. We've also done some investigation into some other options that would stay a little bit more within the existing footprint. But we did, as was noted in the presentation, we think that the sort of conventional improvement of just adding a lane here or there wherever we could at the existing interchange would probably not be sufficient. So the future NEPA study would probably start with those types of improvements I mentioned. The stage 3 improvement, which has free flow ramps, and then there's a sort of a modification to the interchange that has a little bit tighter of a footprint at that location.
Okay. Just maybe reiterate on the near term.
Yeah, so and also the department's considering potentially a queue warning system westbound, which would provide some additional indication upstream on the Beltline if there's slow traffic ahead. And also potentially some changes to the signal timing to try and flush out. I don't think I mentioned that in the last answer. Potentially some signal timing changes that could flush out that ramp when it backs up. That'll need to be studied a little bit more closely because that has impacts up and downstream along Verona Road and so on. But there are a couple of improvements the department will be looking at in more details, more short term.
All right. Next, we have many states have expanded freeways and have not seen the expected congestion relief that was promised during planning. How can we be sure that any potential expansion relieves congestion?
Mm-hmm. It's a fair question, and I think that's why the first step of the NEPA studies is going to be to reassess the traffic forecasts and to consider the growth and development in the area. I think the question is probably getting a little bit at induced demand, which we've had a lot of comments and questions about that through the online form submittal. And that's something that's going to need to be considered in more detail in the NEPA phase. The current PEL study, the forecasts don't do a very good job of considering induced demand. They do a decent job of latent demand, which is really when people that are currently avoiding the Beltline, if you add capacity, they choose to travel the Beltline, whereas induced demand would be choosing to drive instead of take transit or choosing to live further from work. That's more difficult to quantify and is not well captured currently. But it's, again, the forecasts would be revisited and the state of practice at that time would be followed, with stats always continuing to improve the forecasting process. And it kind of depends on the timing moving forward, but it'd be something to look at in the future. And we did do an indirect and cumulative effects analysis, and we did ask local planners their impressions of how land use could change if there was additional capacity in the Beltline. And we got some feedback in that regard on areas that might develop more quickly. And so that's noted in the indirect and cumulative report, and that'd be another starting point for the next phase, the next NEPA phase.
All right. Dane County data indicates VMT is remaining stable even while population grows. How is this updated data going to be reflected? It indicates that the basis for needing additional lanes are not based on contemporary data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's another input to the forecasts that would be considered down the line. We've gotten similar questions ahead of this meeting as well, and in terms of people often wonder about the volumes pre-COVID versus post-COVID. So a lot of the PEL study report data, or really all of the data, the forecasts and such, are based on, they have a 2019 base year, so it's pre-COVID. Currently, generally speaking, the west portion of the Beltline volumes are still down a little bit. They're about 5% less than they were today. They are 5% less today than they were in 2019. On the eastern portion, east of Verona Road, they are higher than they were in 2019. So the traffic has returned and it's grown to some degree. But that's something that'll be, again, looked at and considered in the development of future forecasts for the NEPA studies.
All right, next question. Has Madison Metro been involved in the study?
Yes, they have. It was mentioned in the presentation that we initially prioritized the transit priority components at the interchanges prior to the network redesign that occurred in 2023 and prior to BRT. And we did circle back to Metro and have coordinated with them post network redesign, and since the BRT, the east-west BRT has opened and we are aware of the north-south BRT that's planned. And we do continue. In fact, we had a meeting with Metro last week or
A week ago.
2 weeks ago, yeah. So definitely Metro's been consulted and will continue to be consulted moving forward.
Yeah, throughout the NEPA studies as well.
Yeah.
All right. Next, Dane County, Madison, Middleton, and Monona have climate goals. Fitchburg passed a resolution opposing Beltline expansion. How will WISDOT coordinate with local governments who oppose added lanes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely part of the process. One of the goals, I know the goals went by pretty quickly in the presentation, and there's 12 of them, so it's a lot to read. The materials are available on the website. But one of the goals is to acknowledge area plans, and that will carry forward into NEPA. And the first step, or one of the first steps of a NEPA study is going to be to develop the purpose and need, which is similar to our goals and objectives for the PEL, but they will be revisited, and that will occur in consultation with local officials and elected officials and staff. So it'll be, the PEL is meant to be kind of the starting point for the more detailed NEPA analysis. But that would be something that would be continued to be discussed and factored into development of the purpose and need, and also considered when the alternatives are evaluated in NEPA.
Yeah, one of the things that we have had during the PEL study and will continue in NEPA studies is different committee meetings. We have a technical advisory committee and a policy advisory committee. Policy advisory committee includes elected officials and representatives like administrators from local municipalities. Technical advisory committee is representatives with technical expertise from local municipalities and organizations. So we meet periodically with them, or we did with the PEL study, to discuss the development of the strategy packages, and that will continue forward in future NEPA studies as well. All right, what would an added lane cost? How many businesses would need to be removed? How would this impact the Arboretum?
Those are all good questions. We've done some preliminary evaluation of that, but not to a level of detail that we didn't put too much detail into the PEL summary report because it's pretty early on. The cost would be significant to add a lane, particularly on the east portion where we wouldn't be within the existing footprint. West of Verona Road, expanding to the inside is not as costly or as high impact. The Arboretum, that would definitely be an important consideration in future NEPA analysis. It is a national historic landmark. It became designated as one during the PEL study. And that's got to be considered, and there'd be a lot of coordination with the Arboretum, UW on that. And then the possibility of weaving improvements as well. Those basket weave improvements where we're grade separating the on and the off ramps between interchanges. I mean, those have impacts as well. So there's been an initial look at that. The NEPA analysis will dive into that in a lot more detail, and that's where a better picture of the costs and impacts versus the benefits you gain from something like that will be studied and considered before a preferred alternative in NEPA would be selected.
All right, next question. Will WSDOT consider bike and ped improvements as essential to cover the cost, or will that cost be shifted to a cost share with local governments?
I think that's a bit of a case-by-case basis. I think the roadway crossings and connections, I think it would be pretty standard for WSDOT to include bike and pedestrian accommodations with those. Some of the other connections might be a little bit more case-by-case.
Yeah, I mean, DOT typically does work through cost share with local municipalities for bicycle and pedestrian accommodations. And as Jeff mentioned, when we get into NEPA and we start developing the detailed alternatives, we will be coordinating with those local municipalities and to discuss potential cost shares at that time. All right. Has the Arboretum been a part of this planning, and what was their opinion?
Yeah, so we had some coordination with the Arboretum early on, and I think they've taken a little bit of a wait and see approach. And as I mentioned, we haven't dug into the real nitty gritty details of what potential alternatives through that area would look like. There is a little bit of room there. We, as part of an interim improvement, we did look at an an auxiliary lane between Todd Drive and Verona Road. And there's a little bit of space to fit something in there without encroaching upon the Arboretum. But it's tight, and it would be certainly detailed coordination with the Arboretum will be required moving forward as the alternatives in NEPA are developed.
Yeah, I think like you said, that they've kind of taken the wait and see approach for when we get those more detailed alternatives that have a better idea of what impacts could be. All right. Next we have bike ped connection. Can you explain the possible connection along the Beltline to the Cannonball Trail, to Seminole Highway?
Cannonball Trail to Seminole Highway. So I think we showed that at both potentially north and south of the Beltline. There was a portion of that connection constructed with the Phase 1 Verona Road project. So there's a path essentially that runs a little ways east of Seminole Highway and then stops. The idea would be to continue that to the east, at least to the Cannonball path, potentially further east to Fish Hatchery. Whether that's on the north or the south side, the Arboretum is on both sides of the Beltline in that area. And so that's another example of the alternative that would have to be developed in more detail moving forward. The goal would be, though, to connect Seminole Highway to the Cannonball and potentially the Cannonball to Fish Hatchery Road as well, because there's now a path on the west side of Fish Hatchery Road as well.
All right, next, what is the ballpark cost for the preferred strategy package?
Yeah, so I don't think that's something that I'm comfortable sharing at this point. We definitely have taken.
The preferred strategy package includes the different components that DOT thinks should be evaluated in more detail in future NEPA studies. So it's not a construction alternative. And when we get into NEPA, we'll take those different components that are included in the preferred strategy package and we'll develop detailed alternatives out of them, a range of them. Higher mobility ones, lower mobility ones. There'll be options that may add a travel lane in each direction. There'll be options that may not, or that won't add a travel lane in each direction. And as we get those detailed alternatives put together, that's when we'll start identifying costs.
Yeah, we've really just looked at sort of order of magnitude, kind of relative differences between them, but just don't have the information to provide something that we feel comfortable with.
All right, next we've got flex lane. Was the addition of the flex lane a planned improvement as part of the PEL? What is the expected impact of the flex lane, and how has it worked so far compared to what was expected?
Yeah, so the flex lane, it did come out of the PEL study. There was a transition period in about 2017 when we were beginning to wrap up sort of the first phase of the PEL study, and the department kind of took a pause on the planning studies statewide, not just Southwest region, but across the state. And at that time, we shifted our energies towards something that could be implemented as a little bit of a lower build, lower impact alternative. So it did come out of the PEL study. It's performed quite well. The travel times have been reduced. There are some bottlenecks that occur at the end of the flex lane that we did anticipate. The department did anticipate that. Safety wise, the crashes they're down overall. There are places where, like in those bottleneck areas, where the safety is not much changed. But we certainly can provide additional information on that. I don't really have all the details off the top of my
I've
head.
got some
Sure.
here because I did check with our traffic section. They monitor the flex lane,
Okay.
and crashes are down about 29% from pre-flex lane total crashes. The fatal and injury crashes are roughly the same as it was before the flex lane was put in. So we are seeing a very good reduction in total crashes on the corridor. From a congestion standpoint, in 2019, it took about 23 to 35 minutes to head westbound on the Beltline from the interstate to Verona Road. In 2024, that same trip took 15 to 21 minutes. So it's about a 40% reduction in time. And then also the variability of how long of what you might run into on the Beltline. It went from 23 to 35 minutes, so 12 minutes there, to 15 to 20 minutes, 21 minutes, so 6 minutes there. So it's more reliable as well. All right, next, a tolling question. Has DOT reviewed the success of congestion pricing in New York City and considered adopting alternative solutions to expanding lanes that have proven to reduce congestion?
Yeah, so we did, one portion of the PEL study did include looking at high occupancy toll lanes as well as an HOV lane as options. And the issue with tolling, and so I guess to back up a little bit, the congestion pricing, we got this question as well in the as a sent-in question, an email question. But the congestion pricing in New York City, typically that's on bridges and tunnels and things like that. It's kind of going in and out of a metro area. The Beltline really serves more as the wheel instead of the spokes in the Madison area. And so what that probably would mean for the Beltline would be tolling along the Beltline, perhaps a high occupancy toll lane. And the current state of affairs in Wisconsin is that tolling is not allowed by state statutes. And we've heard this for a while, big traffic, but not as much as the HOV lane, which makes sense because there is some deterrent for people traveling in a hot lane.
All right, next, is there anticipated estimated timeline for from construction phases to construction phases for this project?
Well, the NEPA study, the environmental study, would be the next phase. And we showed how the western portion of the Beltline, NEPA is expected to start in the mid to late 2020s.
We're recommending.
Yep. Yeah, as well as the Verona Road area. NEPA typically takes 2 to 3 years, perhaps more. And then design needs to occur, right away acquisition. So you're looking several years out before construction would likely occur. The eastern portion of the Beltline is even a little further out, although we did mention that there are some potential interim improvements that the department is considering. And it will depend on how the needs change over time, the operations and safety on the Beltline.
Yeah, and more definitive timeframes for future construction would be identified as part of those future NEPA studies. We just aren't to that point yet with this PEL study. All right, next question. Will members of the public be able to influence the purpose and need chosen for the NEPA studies?
Yeah, there's definitely will continue to be outreach throughout NEPA, and that'll be sort of the big kickoff. We'll be talking about purpose and need. Again, the PEL provides a starting point for those future studies, but they will be sort of starting with a clean slate, and there'll definitely be outreach associated with that. Not only public information meetings like this, in-person meetings, but there'll be committee meetings and meetings with communities and stakeholders and things like that.
All right, next, the City of Madison is working on stormwater studies throughout the city and often include road improvements to improve drainage and stormwater infrastructure. Are changes to runoff from additional impervious area being considered?
Yeah, they will be. They will need to be. That's not really, that hasn't necessarily been a consideration in the PEL. We did look at general environmental impacts, and again, similar to some of the other factors that are typically considered, we looked more at relative differences among components and among the strategy packages. But certainly as NEPA proceeds forward into more detailed design, that'll be a consideration. And it will need to be dealt with. There's requirements to to reduce the quantity and improve the quality of runoff with any highway project like potentially could come out of NEPA.
All right, I am not seeing any additional questions at this time. Please note if you did submit a question and we haven't answered it, we will likely be following up with you individually after this meeting. So we'll give it a few minutes here, see if there are any additional questions that come in. All right, it does appear we have another question that has come in related to public feedback. How can we share our feedback and concerns to the proposed improvements outlined in the PEL?
Well, we've got, I think this is on the screen for everybody to see here, but there's comment forms available on the website. And then also the questions that are being asked tonight are going to be recorded. But I think the best way, and Jeff's contact information also is available at the end of that video. I don't know if I can bring it up here. I don't remember if we have it in these slides. But reaching out directly to Jeff is always an option.
My contact information is on the study website. We've got the link there. We have the QR code. As Jeff mentioned, we have an online comment form. So those are the best methods to provide feedback. Right, so we've got another question related to bicycle and pedestrian connections. Which side would the path connection be between Seminole Highway and Cannonball Trail, the north or the south side? Would this require property from the Arboretum?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's to be determined at this point. I think I mentioned earlier there was a portion of a path was constructed with the phase 1 project for Verona Road on the south side. And so that it would be studied in more detail to understand what the impacts would be, could be north or south. The goal would be to avoid impacts to the Arboretum, but that would require some more detailed analysis to really know how that would look.
And again, that would be done in the future NEPA studies. In the PEL, we're saying it could be either side, so both sides would be investigated. We would get feedback on both, look at impacts for both during those future NEPA studies. Let's see. Next question. Have we considered replacing a lane with a bus-only BRT lane?
That was looked at. We had a managed lane sort of technical report, and we did consider buses on the Beltline. It was also considered as a standalone strategy, I think, if I recall correctly. The findings of that were that it's not as useful a corridor for transit for buses as you might expect. And I mentioned earlier how the Beltline sort of serves as the wheel between the spokes that go in and out of the city of Madison and connects them. But we did look at it and didn't find that there was a lot of value in it. That said, it could be revisited in a future NEPA study. And we mentioned on a different answer also that the department continues to coordinate with Metro Transit. And I think if that were to be useful to them, it could be something that would be considered. Today, I know pre-network redesign, there was the buses don't really use the Beltline right now. And I think it just has to do with where people are getting on and where they want to get off in terms of transit service. But we did look at it and didn't find that it had a lot of utility for the buses or for relieving the Beltline.
All right, not seeing any more right now. We'll give it a few minutes. All right. Let's see. It looks like we have another question. Have you considered in-person public involvement meetings?
Yes, this is the first public involvement meeting where we did not have an in-person component. And certainly I would expect during the NEPA phase, the standard would be in-person and virtual. We've had a hard time with turnout. The last two sets of meetings, we just did not get many people to show up. And I think that's the main reason why we went virtual only this time.
Yeah, that our previous rounds of public involvement, we held 2 in-person meetings, and again, like you said, we didn't get great attendance, sometimes 7 people showing up. The last set of public involvement meetings before this one, we did 1 in-person, which didn't get great attendance, and then we did a virtual option, which had significantly better attendance. So we went with the virtual option here. That being said, as we get into the NEPA phase, DOT will evaluate how we're going to handle public involvement, and I would imagine that there would likely be in-person meetings and virtual meetings to start out with, and then we'd go from there. All right, not seeing any other questions right now.
Give it a few.
All right, we're still not seeing any questions at this point. We'll give it another few minutes to see if we get anything additional. As a reminder, if you submitted a question and we did not answer it during this meeting, we will plan to follow up with you individually after the meeting. All right, well, it appears we don't have any other questions at this time. If we didn't respond to you tonight, a study team member will follow up with you via email. Please feel free to submit comments or questions at any time on the study website. I want to thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. Have a good night.
Thank you.